that is a very big problem, and this is not only going to go towards a non-point source, it's going to go towards point solution to help update small communities' water treatment plans. So I think that is an excellent use of this money, and that's why they endorsed it, and strongly are urging their members to vote yes. They're actually traveling around this week, making sure that it's on their membership's radar. Another thing, it is important to realize how much this would cost the average family. Because big numbers, you don't really put it into perspective what it's going to cost you. So this would cost the average Minnesota family for less than $5 a month. And when Minnesota citizens, when we go around the state and we tell them that for $5 a month for your family, we can help ensure water quality, we can make sure that you have access to outdoors, the same traditions that you grew up with, and our way of life, it's a benefit that they think is a good investment. So those are things that you should think about while deciding.
Mrs. Runbeck, do you have anything to say? Or?
Yeah, I do. You know, it really is all about the money. And yes, in 3/8 of a cent increments, it's nothing. But you have to look at the fact that over 25 years, it can be as much as $11 billion. Kind of with no questions asked, right? We do know that no matter what area of government you look at, the spenders have an insatiable appetite. All right, there is no, whether you come to education or healthcare or roads or all of this, there's no amount of money that actually says we've done enough. So this is just one more area where we're going to throw a lot of money at it. And again, not have the questions answered. If there are municipal wastewater treatment plants needed in some of our small rural towns, let's put them on a list. Let's hear right now, all right? I mean, the legislature is not ducking and running from these issues. I mean, that is not what they're there to do. And if they were, they'd be removed from office. So, you know, I just don't think any of this rises to the level of saying we're just going to hand it off. And I think the concern about 12 individuals, 4 of whom are appointed by the governor, and then 4 citizens, I think is a very interesting situation too. We do have the lottery fund, and that was 20 years ago. They went and passed a constitutional amendment dedicating money from the lottery to, again, environmental trust fund. And that was going to spin off a lot of money, but now only 6 cents out of every dollar to the lottery is actually spent on actual environmental issues. I don't happen to know why, but it seems rather kind of crazy to me.
Mr. Runbeck, your time's up, but you bring up a good point. The next question, the topic is funding, and this amendment has presumably been proposed because there is not enough money for clean water, parks, trails, and the arts. So why is there not enough money?
Actually, Senator brings up a great point, the lottery. A lot of the people sitting here don't remember the lottery was passed in 1988, but it was supposed to go towards our natural resources. What we saw over the years, it actually went into the general fund, and it was used for lots of different things as legislators changed. It was put in and spent on priorities that were deemed important at that point. That actually makes our point of why this has to be a constitutional amendment. These funds could only be spent towards their forward purposes. It would not go into the general fund and could not be taken in 2 years, 4 years, or 10 years to meet some other need that's deemed important that day. Our natural resources need a stable, predictable stream of revenue to invest in them. So I would say that the lottery is a perfect example of where the legislature had a good idea, but it just wasn't enacted well. And you're right, today 7 cents on a $1 lottery ticket does go towards natural resource protection, which raises about $25 million a year. But even the lottery themselves, the head of the LCCMR said on Channel 4 this week, it was never meant to do it all. It was to supplement what the legislature has done. However, the legislature has really dropped resource funding to the bottom of their list over the last 25 years, where today we're near 1% of our general fund budget goes towards this. It's at a 30-year low. So while the lottery does help, and it's not an insignificant amount of money, we obviously aren't doing enough because we see these problems in our environment. One other point I would address is the breakdown of the funding is very clear and it is set in stone. It can't be changed. It would go into the Constitution as 33% would go towards a clean water fund, 33% would go towards a fish, game, and wildlife habitat fund, 19.75 would go towards arts throughout the state, and 14.25 would go to our parks and trail system. So that is set in stone, and it could only be changed if we amended this again, which I don't see happening anytime soon. It's a struggle to make sure that we pass this one.
Mrs. Runbeck, why is there not enough money?
Why is there not enough money? Because there's never enough money, all right? It doesn't matter just what issue. There'll never be enough to satisfy all the healthcare needs, all the transportation needs, all the education, all the clean water needs. I mean, it's just a fact of life at the legislature. And you could raise taxes, you know, every year, and it still wouldn't diminish the need, or the so-called need. I mean, you know, these needs find a way of happening. But I do want to just point out that as a percent to total, perhaps, the spending on the out-of-doors has been decreasing. But certainly it's increasing every year. So right now about $750 million, from what I can tell, is spent on the out-of-doors, on parks and trails and fish habitats and so on and so forth. So $750 million. That does not include what might be considered outdoor spending that comes through in the bonding bill every 2 years. So if you look at that, there's another certainly 100 or 200 million that's come through in that. So it's not as though there's not a lot of money already being spent. And then keep in mind too what private individuals, what private organizations are also doing. Again, because it's in their own best interest. All right. I think what is so disturbing is that this assumes that nobody acts in their own best interest. I mean, the people who live on lakes, use rivers, and so on and so forth, are the ones who care about it. They're not going to let it be degraded. We live on a small lake in the suburbs, and already you've got individual citizens on their own putting together efforts to plant buffers and so on their lake shore so that there is more protection from runoff into the lake. I mean, nobody put that in the law. Nobody gave them money to do that. Oh, I take that back. Somebody is paying for the plants, so there may be a private organization doing that. But, you know, this is what people on their own are willing to do for something they care about.
Mr. Poster, I'd like to move on to the next question. Mrs. Runbeck says there will never be enough money. What are alternatives to increasing the sales tax?
Well, I don't think there's a good one for funding these resources. To return to one point, I think $750 million is a bit of an overshot on the number. I believe that includes the DNR, that includes people's salaries, overhead. This money is about project money. Our friends from Ducks Unlimited like to say this is project money. It's going to go into the land. This isn't to pay people's salary. This isn't to build a bureaucracy. This is about plans to improve our natural resources. What I would say about the funding is that this has been 10 years in the making. It's important to step back and take a look at history. This was actually introduced by Senator Bob Lassard in 1998, and slowly it's gained traction with the legislature, and finally this year has gotten placed on the ballot for Minnesota citizens to say if they want to vote yes to invest in these areas. So they have not come up with a good form of funding in the last 30 years, as we've seen it drop. So this is really, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's taken 10 years just to get it this far, and there's nothing to indicate that we will have this chance again. Senator Bob Lassard was on a fly around with Coach Bud Grant and Ron Shera this week, and he said, I really feel like this is my last shot. If we don't pass this, we won't have an opportunity like this to invest in these areas again. So I think this is a really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pass this. It took a decade to get us here, and if this doesn't pass, we will not be offered the chance to dedicate funds constitutionally again.